So welcome everyone to this Thursday night Dharma talk at Mountain Cloud. In Santa Fe, in and through the cloud, we gather in the form of shared practice, what Dogen called the still, still state. As wild wind, freezing winter storms, and in some places record high temperatures have been gripping the country. Constant change and more signs of climate change. Tonight, we gather on the eve of the 1-year anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. 1 year of a brutal war, deadly and devastating, with repercussions for vulnerable populations all around the world. Constant change. And our urgent longing for change, for an end to conflict, for a turnabout in how we value life in all its forms, for a life-giving response. In 2021, a few months before the invasion, I began meeting with a member of our worldwide Mountain Cloud Sangha. Karen Boreham lived in the countryside in the UK. Over the course of our meetings, I learned that her parents were Ukrainian immigrants to the UK. Her father had been an activist, a member of the resistance, first in Ukraine and then from afar. In one of our meetings, the invasion then fully underway, our hearts weighed down. Karen asked if she could share a story. After her parents died and their concerns about safety were no longer an issue, Karen and her sister made a pilgrimage to Ukraine, including to the village where her father's family had an estate. Nothing remained of it. A group of villagers went with them to find the land where the estate had been. They came to a clearing in the land, a bend in the river, and stopped. It was here. The group stood in silence. Then one of the women began to sing. One by one, they joined in an old folk song that grandmothers would sing as a lullaby. Karen was lit from within, telling that story by the beauty of the people, their boundless generosity, their hearts wide open despite a history of such loss. In a way, that describes Karen. When I met her, she was frail physically, navigating the pain of a debilitating spinal disease, and lit from within. A kind of vitality that can't be snuffed out. After our meetings, I would send the next koan when the time came. She didn't want to look ahead. And often she would write back, short and to the point. Here's a bit from one of those emails. The koans are touching my heart in ways I don't understand. Perhaps they are teaching me, amongst so many other things, to trust in not knowing. And then here's a bit from another message. The header of it reads, "With empty hands, I take hold of my pain." Karen wrote, "When we talked last, you coined that koan for me as an extension of the empty hands holding the plow koan that I've been working on. It was an inspiring insight, and I let it float around me when the pain is there." She went on, "Most of my life, since I was diagnosed with this spinal disease when I was not quite 30, I've tried to be brave about it, not talk about it, not let others know the pain I was often in. But this latest flare-up, lasting well over a year now, has been like no others in duration and pain. And I've had to let go and say, this is it. This is happening. This is now. I could not have done this," she wrote, "without koans, without this practice." Tonight, I'd like to turn to a koan that is exactly about this practice, about the world just as it is, happening now. The world we explore, discover, and embody on the path Zen calls the way. This koan is from a collection compiled by Dogen. Dogen, the putative founder of Soto Zen in Japan. And he collected 300 koans. Early on in his teaching was 1223 to 1227, so started out 23 years old. It's called the Chinese Shobogenzo, or Mana Shobogenzo, the Treasury of the True Dharma Eye. In English, this collection is published as the True Dharma Eye, Zen Master Dogen's 300 koans. Kaz Tanahashi and John Daido Lori Roshi have translated it. Daido Lori added commentary and a verse to each case in that traditional way, like Mumon with the Mumonkan, and Wanshi Secho with the Blue Cliff Record, Wanshi Bansho with the Book of Equanimity, just this practice. So tonight I'd like to look together at case 149 from this Treasury of the True Dharma Eye. In the translation, Tanahashi and Daido Lori use the Chinese names, but I'm going to use the Japanese. There's a little more familiarity there in this Sambo Zen tradition. Here's the case. One day, Seppo said to the assembly, "What we are talking about is like a rice field. It is dependent upon the people plowing the fields and planting the seeds. Do not miss receiving this gift. Gensha said, then what is the rice field itself? Seppo said, look. Gensha said, although what you say is correct, I wouldn't say it that way. Seppo said, then how would you say it? Gensha said, one by one, each and every person. That's the case. Seppo is one of the great Zen or Chan masters, Chinese, living near the end of the Tang Dynasty. He's a successor to Master Toksan, this very powerful master. It took Seppo a long time to come to realization. It's a wonderful story in itself. And there are several koans that give us glimpses into parts of his path. When he finally awakens, it is deep. He was close to 50 at the time. And then Seppo went off to practice by himself, to deepen further, to clarify his eye. And finally, he establishes a monastery high up on a mountain in a range called Elephant Bone Cliffs, or sometimes called Snowy Peaks, because there's snow cover year-round. It's so high, so north. Gensha was a disciple and Dharma heir of Seppo. From Gensha, when he's a master, we have that beautiful teaching. Throughout the universe, one bright pearl, or the whole universe is one bright pearl. Luminous, precious gem, one bright pearl, freely rolling, no edge, this whole universe. So in the case, Seppo is addressing his assembly with this teaching. What we are talking about is like a rice field. It is dependent upon the people plowing the fields and planting the seeds. Jeffrey Shugen Arnold, the successor to Daido Loori, has a talk on this case given to his assembly at Zen Mountain Monastery, and it's given on the last day of a session. They've been practicing. Seppo's teaching, Shugen Arnold notes, starts as if in the middle of a conversation, an intimate, ongoing conversation about this awake world, this practice we've been doing. Arnold says, what we're talking about is the path of liberation, fundamental reality, the universal experience of life. And then he goes on, everything we touch, experience, holds the seeds of our dissatisfaction and awakening. What we're talking about, he says, is impermanence, How do we live this life? How do you live with that one? The one on your seat. We here might add, what we're talking about is the war in Ukraine, the planet losing its bearings, us losing our bearings about who we truly are. We're talking about what Yamada Koan Roshi calls the disease of division, a single thing appearing to be two things. What we're talking about is the human condition and the intrinsic capacity to awaken, to open both eyes and see one world, one indivisible entirety, each bit, all of it. Each bit. Seppo likens it to a rice field. It, not only one, empty, infinitely dynamic, cannot be fixed, identified. Arnold points to the Heart Sutra, a text that says repeatedly what it is not. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No color, sound, smell, taste, touch thing. No identity. If we're going to talk about it, we need to liken it to something. Like a rice field, it is dependent on the people plowing the fields and planting the seeds, Seppo says. What kind of dependency is this? How can it, this fact, be dependent on anything? Plowing the fields, planting the seeds, all this activity, this functioning, cultivating the field, feeding the people, not just like that, that's it. Also, the field of practice, giving ourselves to sit, to taste and see the empty, infinite, groundless ground that comes forth in every gesture. Plowing, planting, speaking, listening. Daido Loori writes, "It is because of this gift of activity that one's own self has come into being. One's own self. One entirety functioning, this bright pearl, and at the same time, unique and unrepeatable." Seppo says, do not miss the gift. Then Gensha, this clear-eyed student, steps forward. Then what is the rice field itself? Among all this relativity, what is the absolute? Seppo's been showing it, freely presenting. That's what we're talking about. Here it is. But now to this question, he doesn't hold back. What is the rice field itself? Look. There it is. All of it. Look. Everything swallowed up, everything included. The field, the fact, the source. And Gensha, on such familiar terms with his teacher, responds, although what you say is correct, I wouldn't say it that way. And Seppo asks, then how would you say it? There's a famous exchange between two close Dharma brothers, Ungan and Dogo, another case. And there, in that case, these two are raising the question, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with so many hands and eyes? Dogo responds, there's some of this exchange. The whole body is hands and eyes. Like, actually, that's Ungan. Ungan presents it. The whole body is hands and eyes. Actually, there they are, hands and eyes. Dogo responds, you said it very well, but you expressed only 8/10 of it. This common way of working together to clarify, to present, at play, really, in this Dharma. So Ungan asks, how would you say it? That's in some translations, elder brother, how would you say it? And Dogo then says, the entire body is hands and eyes. The whole body, the entire body, 80%, 100%, 1%. One fact. I hear Ryon Roshi suddenly, you can never express 100%. At the same time, each expression is it. Complete. Seppo's look presents the whole. Gensha sees and says, yes, but, or yes, and. Then how would you say it? And Gensha says, one by one, each and every person. This it. This remarkable fact. We say, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, and yet, one by one, each and every person. There's a line in Mumon's verse to the first case in the Mumonkan, or Gateless Gate, that famous Joshu's dog, Moo. Mumon writes, the perfect manifestation, the absolute command. In the case with Seppo and Gensha, this collection, Daido Lori Roshi, he adds a footnote. Actually, every single line has a little footnote. And he says, living in the same household, they both know the cupboard well. look, one by one, each person. In Shugen Arnold Roshi's talk, there's a moment where he comes to this look. 7 days into session, and he proffers this image. Instead of the jiki or monitor ringing the bell 3 times to begin a round of sitting, she or he should just call out, look. That's the bell. That's the breath. The all-inclusive now. Look. And right there, simultaneously, one by one, each and every person. Plowing, planting, what fruit will it yield? Daido Lori's commentary includes this line: the wholehearted practice of the way simply has no edges. Plowing the field has no edges. Washing the dishes has no edges. Standing, sitting, distraction, return, composure. A gift not to be missed. Last Saturday was our February Zazenkai here, Mountain Cloud. And later that day, I came across an email from Karen that was sent the day after our January Zazenkai a year ago. She wrote, "It was a lovely, inspiring day yesterday. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I couldn't stay till the very end, but at 10 o'clock English time, I knew sloth and sleepiness would overwhelm me for the last sit." She went on, "I want to share 2 amazing zazens with you. The first, during the Zazenkai, while I was sitting with Mu, my new koan hanging in there somewhere. My breathing seemed to change until it was not just me breathing, but the earth, trees, stars, the house, everything. And I knew it was Mu breathing everything, everything including me was Mu. And today, during Zazen, it happened again, only this time went further. Everything turned into light. A light I couldn't see, but knew was there. Mu was light. I was. Every single thing in the universe was pure light. For some reason, my eyes had closed, but I felt I must open them slightly, which I usually do, she says, to let this luminosity inside me burst out into love and compassion for the world, which it did, though it was there all the time. But it made my heart literally tremble, and joyful tears filled me, which mingled with this transcendent light. She writes, "I'm trying to find words for the inexplicable. There aren't any, as you know. It was profound, mysterious, joyful. I've been walking with awe and wonder all day." It doesn't have to be like that. But somehow that awe and wonder of that day for Karen is right here. A few months later, her precarious health took a turn and she went into the hospital. In our last Doksan, Karen had been sitting with a koan about life and death, a case we heard about recently. It's known as Tosotsu's third barrier, very short. It asks, when you have freed yourself from life and death, you know where to go. After your four elements have decomposed, this great unbinding, where will you go? So the day we met, Karen and I took up the case in a traditional way, quite clear. And then came her unique presentation, one by one, each and every person, into that edgeless space of our Zoom meeting. She sang a Ukrainian lullaby. Her voice was quiet and clear. One heart, broken all the way open. On April 18th, Karen's daughter, Jackie, wrote to me, I just wanted to share with you that we are burying Mum at the natural burial ground near home. It will be at noon on April 22nd. It's a beautiful wild place, a meadow full of trees, birds, butterfly, and bumblebees. She will be buried amongst the trees. Deer visit regularly, and I'm told a white owl comes and sits on a tree nearby most evenings. It is just perfect. I know Mum is okay wherever she is. I know she will be at peace, but right now the massive gap she has left in our lives is almost too much to bear. So selfishly, that gives me little comfort now. But I know this will change with time. And one day we'll be able to think of Mum with more joy and laughter than grief. One other email from Jackie. I'm not sure of the timing, but it doesn't really matter. She wrote, when Mum was in the hospital, she said something to me which I want to share with you. I know Mum would be okay with this. I believe she would like me to share this with you. This Dharma, it wants to be shared. Jackie writes, it was a few days before her death, and it was very strange because we weren't talking about death or dying. In fact, the focus of our thoughts and conversation was around planning for Mum to come home. This particular visit, Mum was shattered. She had walked some steps with the physio and it had totally exhausted her. I had my usual hour and spent it just sitting with her. She was sleeping on and off, and I was just creaming her hands, combing her, all the little things you do when words aren't needed. Sometimes she'd wait for a while, we'd have a little chat about things, then she'd just close her eyes and sleep again. Then at one point, she opened her eyes, looked at me, and said, "It's okay, you know. I'm not worried. Life and death, it's the same." Then she smiled, shrugged, and said, "Confusing, but I know what I'm talking about." She closed her eyes and went back to sleep. Jackie's emails have a signature line, a quote from John Muir. When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. Not so different from Seppo, who shows us the field, the plowing, and planting, and offers a word. Do not miss receiving this gift. Thus, we bow to one another.